Anything that involves money interests other parties, but one must be aware that anything involving money has some degree of risk to it. For those who don't know, staking is where a person finances a player's buy-ins on either a short-term or long-term basis in exchange for a portion of the player's winnings. A poker staking agreement may be advantageous for both parties when done properly. However, staking agreements gone wrong have led to some of poker's most infamous public disputes and ended many careers. In this video, we look at the ugly side of poker staking, and by the end, you'll be able to assess whether it's for you or not. Number 1. You're putting yourself in debt. One of the main disadvantages of getting staked in poker is that you are putting yourself in debt in order to play the game.
You have a better chance, I'll stake you. I'm saying I'll give you the money to keep going.
Every poker staking contract contains a make-up clause because, without one, backing poker players profitably would be nearly impossible long-term. Make-up represents the amount that must be earned before a player that is being staked can start to split profits again based on the terms of the agreement. The problem with make-up is that it is cumulative. For example, let's say a backer invests $1,000 in a player with a 50-50 profit-sharing deal, and the player plays in 9 $100 tournaments and does not cash in any of them. The player is now $900 in make-up. If the player plays a 10th $100 tournament and cashes for $5,000, the player would be obligated to pay $1,000 in make-up, that is the buy-in of the 10 tournaments, and then split the remaining $4,000 with the backer per the terms of the 50-50 deal. This is done because the backing contract would make little sense if the person backing a player was unable to earn his losses before any profits were split. Many poker players fall deep into debt with a backer and never are able to pay their debts. This often leads the player to go to another backer and fall even deeper in debt. There are only 3 ways to get out of make-up without winning it all back. Number 1, you get dropped by your backer, in which case he terminates your contract and the make-up gets erased. Number 2, you pay the make-up from your own pocket. And number 3, you quit poker altogether. But if you ever make a comeback to poker, you would still be under the staking contract, and every dollar you win would go towards paying back your old backer. Number 2, you do not learn bankroll management. Another problem with staking is that poker players that are regularly backed into poker tournaments or cash games seldom learn how to properly manage a bankroll. Players are often staked because they are not able to afford to play otherwise, and they rely on other people's money to play poker. There's just something about receiving free money that messes with people's psyche and makes them act irresponsibly. The problem with this is that when an agreement goes south, or a player runs into a bad streak of luck and loses their staking, they are unable to play at the stakes they're accustomed to. They then have little or no clue how to build a bankroll. Number 3, you may not improve your game. Another common issue faced by players who are routinely staked is that they occasionally find themselves stuck at a certain level or unable to advance in their poker skills. Players that have this issue typically do not value the backer's money and play significantly looser than players who are trying to manage their bankroll or who have all the actions to themselves. One explanation for this is that some players assume that once they are good enough to be staked by one person, they will be staked by others as well and stop trying to get better. The goal of a player that is getting staked is to get yourself to the point where you can play on your own dime. The problem with some players is that they do not work towards their goal and are fine with using someone else's money. They become complacent and end up never moving on to the next level. Before we continue with this video, give me 20 seconds to let you know that for a limited time, one of Bluff the Spot's coaches, Jimmy Durade, is giving away his guide on how to crush your opponents in 3-bet pots for free. If you are serious about your poker game and want to develop an unfair advantage over your opponents pre-flop and understand how pros really make their pre-flop decisions, I strongly recommend you check it out. The link is in the description. Number 4. you lose your freedom. A lot of people play poker professionally to be away from the traditional boss-employee dynamic, as they'd much rather work for themselves. By bringing in someone who is financially backing you, that freedom is gone. You're returning to that dynamic where you have someone to answer to if you lose. Although the backer has no influence over your life and cannot compel you to play when you don't feel like it, he may nonetheless demand that you do several things, such as play a particular volume of hand each month, etc. For some people, that's uncomfortable and they'd much rather play with their own money, where if they lose it, they only have themselves to answer to. And lastly, number 5, pressure. Being able to play without personal risk sounds fine, but if you find yourself on a bad run, you'll start to feel the pressure. Nobody wants to lose money, but when you're losing money that isn't even yours, it feels even worse. They almost feel guilty if they bust a tournament or lose a few buy-ins. Pressure can manifest itself in your play. You may find yourself missing value bets, bluffing less frequently, or making bad folds. This can be a big deal for players, especially if they are taking a shot in a much larger tournament and they sell off a significant portion of their buy-in. In these scenarios, some players will feel like they have wasted a tournament, as they have played as well as they could to win the whole thing, but they only get to keep a fraction of the winnings, or 0% if they are still in makeup. There are stories of players who people thought were running very good and were up hundreds of thousands of dollars, but the harsh reality was they were millions of dollars in makeup. Nothing is more heartbreaking than having to apply for a loan to pay the expenses after running out of your life savings. On the flip side of staking, there are also many advantages like free coaching, better deals, networking in the poker community, and opportunity to play higher stakes. However, on closer inspection, the risk of staking outnumber the positive accounts by a mile. You need to give it a lot of thought before entering into a staking contract. It's not a decision to be taken lightly. After all, only you can choose if it's the best course of action for you. It all comes down to your personality and specific requirements. There are great benefits, but also some serious disadvantages. This video is not to discourage players who want to get staked. It's just a reminder to be responsible and think about all the aspects before you enter into any agreement. More than any other choice you will ever make, whether you choose to get staked or not may have a tremendous impact on your poker career.